Hi guys, and welcome to Boring History Relaxing. Tonight we drift back tens of thousands of years to a place where the sky feels closer to your head and the cold already nips at your ears before the sun has fully disappeared. You're standing on frozen ground, your breath puffing out in soft white clouds, watching the light drain from the world minute by minute. Somewhere nearby, ice cracks with a sound like distant thunder. The night is coming, and you are very aware that darkness here is not just an absence of light, but a test you must pass to see another morning. You probably would not survive this without help tools or a very good plan. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you feel like it, drop a comment telling me where you are in the world and what time it is there right now. Now dim the lights. You let the last strip of orange fade from the horizon and feel the temperature sink with it. This is the Ice Age, and nightfall is not cozy. It is dangerous quiet in the wrong way and heavy with uncertainty. You do not have a weather app. You do not know if the wind will shift or if snow will start falling before midnight. All you know is that once the sun is gone, the cold tightens its grip fast. One mainstream fact historians agree on is that during the last ice age, temperatures in many regions routinely dropped far below anything most modern humans experience, especially at night. In parts of Ice Age Europe, winter nighttime temperatures may have fallen well below -20 degrees Celsius. You feel that reality in your bones now, long before true winter even arrives. The ground is hard under your feet, and every exposed patch of skin tingles then stings. You're not alone though. Around you are other shapes moving with purpose as the light fades. No one panics. That is important. Panic wastes energy, and energy is heat. Instead, there is a quiet routine unfolding, practiced and refined over countless evenings, just like this one. You follow along because you have learned that surviving the night starts hours before it actually begins. The air smells faintly of smoke already. Someone has been feeding a fire since late afternoon, not for comfort but for preparation. Fire is not guaranteed. That is a key thing to understand. Early humans did not simply flick a lighter whenever they felt chilly. Fire had to be made protected and treated almost like a living thing. Lose it and the night becomes far more frightening. There is also a softer sound beneath the crackle of flames. Breathing, many breaths, slow, controlled, deliberate. You notice how people position themselves close to one another as darkness deepens. This is not affection in the modern sense, this is thermal strategy. Bodies radiate heat, and in a world like this, heat is a shared resource. A quirky but real tidbit is that some Ice Age groups may have used smouldering animal dung as fuel when wood was scarce. It burns slowly, produces steady heat, and smells. Well, not great, but you learn to associate that smell with survival. Even now, you wrinkle your nose slightly, then relax. That smell means warmth will last a little longer tonight. As the sky turns deep blue, then black, the sounds change. Daytime birds are gone. Insects are quiet. Instead, you hear the wind sliding over ice, and snow making low whistles, and sudden gusts that rattle nerves. Your ears strain not just for predators, but for signs the weather is turning worse. Sound carries differently in cold air, sharper and farther, which can be both helpful and unsettling. Historians still argue whether early humans feared the night itself or simply respected it. Sitting here, you understand how the two blur together. The darkness presses in, shrinking the world to the circle of firelight. Outside, that glow is uncertainty. Inside, it is routine memory and fragile safety. You adjust your stance, pulling something rough and heavy tighter around your shoulders. It is not clothing in the modern sense, more like a large animal, hide stiff, in places softer where it has been worked by hands over time. The texture scratches slightly, but it blocks the wind. That matters more than comfort. Someone adds another piece of fuel to the fire. Sparks jump upward, briefly illuminating faces. You see concentration there and not fear. This is another key survival lesson. Emotion is managed carefully. Too much excitement wastes calories. Too much dread freezes decision-making. Calm keeps you alive. As night fully settles, stars appear with startling clarity. There is no light pollution here, nothing to soften the sky. The stars feel close enough to touch sharp and cold themselves. Some people glance up, others do not. You know that stories will come later once everyone is settled, once the most urgent work is done. For now, the focus is simple. Stay warm. Stay together. Keep the fire alive. The night is long and dawn is not guaranteed. You shift your weight, feeling the cold creep in around your feet, and remind yourself that this is only the beginning of the lesson. The Ice Age night has rules and you're just starting to learn them. The cold deepens faster than you would like. It is not a gentle slide, but a sudden drop, as if someone quietly opened a door and let an invisible force pour in. Your toes feel it first, then your fingers, then a creeping chill along your spine that no posture quite fixes. Ice Age nights are not just colder than days, they are a different world entirely. Without the sun, the land loses heat at a brutal pace, and you feel that loss with every breath you take. One widely accepted historical fact is that Ice Age climates were marked by extreme daily temperature swings. Even during relatively mild seasons, nighttime cold could be severe enough to kill an unprotected human in a matter of hours. You do not need a thermometer to know this. Your skin tells you. The air feels sharp and your lungs dry and biting, and each inhale stings just a little. You learn quickly that standing still is dangerous. Movement generates heat, but too much movement leads to sweat, and sweat is a silent enemy. Wet skin in freezing air pulls heat away from the body far faster than dry skin ever could. So you move carefully, deliberately. Few steps. A shift of weight. Hands tucked back under hides. Everything is measured. The ground beneath you radiates cold upward. Even through layers of hide and grass, you can feel it seeping in. Modern people often imagine cold as something that falls from the sky, but here you learn it rises too. The frozen earth is like a giant block of ice slowly draining warmth from anything resting on it. This is why people rarely lie flat. Knees are bent, bodies curl inward. Every position is chosen with thermal survival in mind. A strange sound cuts through the quiet. A low popping crack that echoes faintly. Ice expanding or contracting, responding to the temperature shift. It makes your heart jump the first few times you hear it. Over time, you learn to distinguish these harmless noises from the ones that matter. The human brain becomes very good at pattern recognition when mistakes mean death. There is an odd comfort in the predictability of the cold itself. It is relentless, yes, but it follows rules. Clear skies mean colder nights. Wind changes everything. Clouds can be a blessing, trapping heat like a lid. You watch the sky constantly, even after dark, reading shapes and movement by firelight and starlight combined. A quirky tidbit archaeologists sometimes mention is that frostbite scars may have been so common that people recognized them as a normal part of aging. Slightly shortened fingers or toes might not have marked injury so much as experience. You glance at the hands around you, noticing knuckles swollen and fingers not quite straight. These are not deformities. They are survival records written in flesh. Historians still debate how aware early humans were of the exact dangers of hypothermia as a medical condition. What is clear is that they understood its effects. Slowing movement, confusion, a dangerous sense of warmth that arrives just before collapse. You have seen it before. Everyone here has. That shared knowledge keeps people alert, watching one another for signs of trouble. The fire becomes more than warmth now. It is a clock. As fuel burns down, time passes. Each addition is a small promise of continued life. The person tending it does not relax. Their eyes track the flames, constantly adjusting, shielding, feeding. Losing the fire in this cold would be catastrophic. Starting it again in the dark with numb fingers and rising wind might not be possible. Your breath forms a steady rhythm, a small cloud that appears and vanishes. You notice how close people sit, close enough to feel each other move. Heat overlaps, shoulders touch, backs pressed together. There is a faint smell of hair smoke animal fat. These smells blend into something oddly reassuring. They mean you're not alone in the dark. The cold also changes how sound travels. A cough sounds louder than it should. A footstep crunches sharply. Somewhere far off a howl rises thin and eerie. A wolf, perhaps, or something else. You cannot be sure. Cold air carries sound farther, and that makes the night feel crowded with invisible presences. One mainstream scientific understanding is that humans lose heat fastest from extremities and through breathing. That knowledge learned through hard experience shapes behavior. Hands are kept hidden. Mouths are sometimes covered with fur or cloth to warm incoming air slightly. You find yourself breathing more slowly, more shallowly, conserving warmth with every exhale. There is also the mental cold. Darkness combined with freezing temperatures has a way of narrowing thought. Your world shrinks to immediate sensations: warmth, cold, hunger, safety. Fear lurks at the edges, but routine keeps it at bay. You focus on small tasks, adjusting a hide, feeding the fire, listening. A fringe idea some researchers explore is whether early humans deliberately used mild cold exposure to build resilience, much like modern cold training. It is hard to say if this was intentional or simply unavoidable. Sitting here, you suspect it was the latter. The Ice Age did not offer many choices. You adapted or you disappeared. The night stretches on. Stars wheel slowly overhead, though you do not track them consciously. Time feels thick, almost sticky. Each hour is something to be endured, yet there is a strange steadiness to it all. You have survived nights like this before. Others have too. That knowledge settles into your chest like a small ember. As the cold presses harder, you lean closer to the fire, careful not to scorch your skin. You feel the contrast sharply. One side of your body warm, the other aching with cold. This balancing act is constant. Too close and you risk burns or damaged hides. Too far and the cold claws its way back in. You glance around once more, counting shapes in the firelight. Everyone is still here. Everyone is breathing. For now, that is enough. The cold may be beyond imagination for those who have never felt it, but you are learning its patterns, its limits, its weaknesses. And that knowledge, slowly earned through nights like this, is what keeps you alive until morning. As the hours pass, you become more aware of your own body, not as something abstract, but as a tool shaped for this exact struggle. You feel the thickness of muscle under your skin, the way fat sits in certain places, the way your chest warms slightly faster than your hands or feet. Early humans did not survive Ice Age nights by accident. Their bodies carried quiet advantages earned over many generations of people who endured cold or did not endure at all. One mainstream fact supported by fossil evidence is that Ice Age humans, including early Homo sapiens in colder regions, tended to have stockier builds than many modern populations. Shorter limbs and broader torsos reduce surface area, which helps conserve heat. As you sit here, knees drawn in arms tucked close, you realize how much your shape matters. Heat leaks out of long, thin forms more easily. Compact bodies hold onto it longer. You notice how people rarely fully relax. Even in stillness, there is a subtle tension in muscles, a readiness to shift to respond. This is not anxiety so much as awareness. The cold punishes inattention. Numbness can creep in quietly, especially in fingers and toes. Every so often you wiggle them slightly, just enough to keep blood moving without sweating. Your skin itself plays a role. Goosebumps rise tiny muscles, contracting to lift hair and trap a thin layer of air close to the body. On its own, it is not much, but combined with hides and fur, it helps. You think about how modern humans barely notice this reflex anymore. Here it feels like one of many small allies. A lesser known but fascinating tidbit is that some researchers believe early humans may have had slightly higher resting metabolic rates in cold environments. Burning more calories means producing more internal heat. Of course, that comes at a cost. You need more food. That constant hunger is part of the deal. Warmth is never free. Historians still debate how much of Ice Age survival came from biological adaptation versus cultural innovation. Sitting here, the answer feels obvious. It is both. Your body gives you a starting point, but without knowledge, without shared habits, without tools, that body would not last long. Biology buys you time. Culture teaches you how to use it. You feel the way your posture changes instinctively. Spine curved, chin tucked, exposed areas minimized. No one taught you this in words. You learned by watching others, by copying what worked. Children do it too, curling in close to adults, mimicking their movements. This silent education is constant, especially at night. Your breathing remains slow and controlled. Rapid breathing wastes heat. You can feel warmth leaving your body with each exhale, a small but steady loss. Some people pull hides up over their mouths, creating a pocket of slightly warmer air to breathe in again. It fogs with condensation, then freezes lightly at the edges. You brush frost away, occasionally careful not to tear the material. The cold also sharpens your senses. You hear more. You feel textures more intensely. The roughness of hide against skin. The grit of ash under your fingers. The faint vibration of the ground when someone shifts nearby. This heightened awareness is tiring, but it keeps you alive. You think about pain. Cold pain is strange. At first it is sharp, almost electric. Then it dulls. That dullness is dangerous. It tells you something is wrong. You watch others for signs of it. Pale skin, sluggish movement, a distant look in the eyes. Community is not just companionship here, it is monitoring. One accepted scientific understanding is that shivering is an automatic response to generate heat through muscle movement. You feel it start lightly in your thighs and shoulders. Not violent shaking, just a subtle tremor. You allow it. Fighting, shivering wastes energy. Letting it happen is part of the balance. A fringe idea occasionally discussed is whether early humans consciously timed sleep cycles to body temperature changes, resting more deeply when internal warmth peaked. There is no clear proof, but you sense patterns forming. People rest in turns. No one collapses fully into unconsciousness for long. The night demands partial vigilance. You also feel the limits of the body. No matter how adapted, cold still wins eventually if conditions worsen. Wind picks up slightly and everyone reacts at once, adjusting positions, tightening coverings, shifting closer together. Bodies form a rough circle, backs to the breeze fire at the center. This shape appears again and again across time and place because it works. You notice scars, old injuries, healed breaks. Survival leaves marks. These bodies are not perfect. They are used. They have been tested. Every mark tells a story of a previous night, a previous winter, a previous mistake survived. Your own hands ache dully now. You press them between your thighs, trapping them in warmth. This simple act feels ancient, instinctive. It probably is. You imagine countless hands doing the same thing over thousands of years, all for the same reason. As the night deepens further, fatigue settles in. Your body wants to conserve energy to rest. But the cold does not care about your need for sleep. It keeps demanding attention. You learn to exist in this, in between, state not fully awake, not fully asleep, muscles relaxed but ready, mind drifting but anchored. There is a quiet pride in this endurance. Not pride as celebration, but as calm confidence. You are built for this more than you might think. Not perfectly, not comfortably, but enough. Enough to make it through another night if you are careful, if you remember what your body can do, and if you respect what it cannot. You shift slightly, easing pressure from one hip, feeling warmth redistribute. The fire crackles softly, breath clouds the air. Your body holds on, doing its part, shaped by countless cold nights just like this one. The fire is small, but it feels enormous. In a night like this, a handful of flames can define the boundary between life and something far colder and quieter. You sit close enough to feel your face warm, far enough that your eyebrows do not singe. The light flickers across the ground, turning stones into shadows that stretch and shrink like living things. Fire is not just heat. It is reassurance, focus, and control in a world that offers very little of any of those. Long before this moment, humans learned how to create and maintain fire deliberately, at least several 100,000 years ago. That ability changed everything. With fire nights stopped being an automatic retreat into darkness. You could see, you could cook, you could stay awake without freezing. Sitting here, you understand that fire is less a tool and more a companion. It demands attention, but it gives back warmth and time. The air near the flames smells sharp and dry. Smoke curls upward, catching in your throat if you breathe too deeply. Your eyes sting slightly. Still, you welcome it. Smoke keeps insects away in warmer seasons, and even now its smell seems to mark this place as safe. Outside the firelight, the world belongs to the cold. Inside it, you belong to yourself. Keeping the fire alive is a quiet skill. Someone feeds it slowly, not in big dramatic gestures, but with patience. Too much fuel smothers the flame. Too little lets it fade. You watch how hands move careful and practice nudging embers, adjusting airflow. Fire responds to care. Neglect it for even a short while, and it punishes you. There is an old understanding passed down through observation rather than words. Hardwoods burn longer, dry materials catch faster. Wind can be both ally and enemy. You angle your body slightly to block gusts becoming part of the fire's defense without thinking about it. This cooperation between human and flame feels natural now, but it was once revolutionary. A lesser-known detail often mentioned by archaeologists is that early hearths were sometimes lined with stone to reflect heat inward. This simple design choice could raise the temperature around a fire noticeably, making a small blaze far more effective. You feel that reflected warmth now bouncing back toward your legs and chest, as if the ground itself is helping you survive. The fire also shapes time. Without clocks or calendars, its behavior tells you how the night is progressing. Bright flames mean energy. Glowing embers signal endurance. When the fire sinks low, you know dawn is still far away. Someone always watches it. Letting everyone sleep at once would be a mistake no one here would make. There is comfort in the routine of tending it. Add fuel, adjust, wait, repeat. This rhythm quiets the mind. Your thoughts slow, aligning with the steady crackle and pop. Even fear seems to soften when given a task to focus on. Researchers continue to disagree on how often early humans lost and regained fire rather than maintaining it continuously. Some argue that keeping fire alive across days and even weeks was common. Others suggest it was frequently lost and recreated. Sitting here, you sense how precious it is. Losing it would feel like losing a limb. Fire also brings people closer emotionally. Faces glow orange and red. Expressions soften. Stories come easier. Even silence feels shared rather than empty. The cold still presses in from all sides, but it is held at bay by this small, bright centre. You feel your hands warm slowly, sensation returning in waves. At first there is tingling, then a dull ache, then relief. You are careful not to rush it. Rewarming too quickly can hurt. Experience has taught this lesson more effectively than any explanation. The flames flicker higher for a moment as fresh fuel catches. Shadows dance across the hides draped around you. Someone sighs softly, not in exhaustion, but in relief. The fire is strong enough for now. You lean in just slightly, eyes half closed, letting warmth soak into your face. The night is still long, but with fire it is manageable. Without it, the cold would win quickly. You understand this deeply, not as an abstract idea, but as a truth felt in your muscles and skin, As sparks drift upward and vanish into the dark, you realize how fragile this lifeline is. A gust of wind, a careless movement, a moment of inattention could end it. So you stay alert, calm, and close. The fire breathes. You breathe with it. Together, you wait. As the fire settles into a steady glow, you begin to understand that warmth alone is not enough. Fire must last. It must survive wind shifts, drifting snow fatigue, and the slow dulling of attention that comes with long nights. Keeping a flame alive through the Ice Age night is not dramatic. It is quiet, patient work done by people who know that a single mistake can unravel everything before dawn. Someone near you carefully rakes embers inward away from the edges where cold air creeps closest. The movement is slow, almost meditative. Embers are precious. They hold heat far longer than open flame glowing softly like the memory of fire rather than fire itself. You watch closely, learning again without being taught. Archaeological evidence from multiple Ice Age sites shows that humans often banked fires intentionally, covering them with ash to preserve heat overnight. This technique reduced fuel use and protected embers from wind. You can see the logic instantly. Ash insulates. It looks lifeless, but beneath it warmth waits. In the morning, a careful breath and a bit of fuel can bring flame roaring back. The smell changes as ash builds. Sharper smoke fades, replaced by something earthier and calmer. Your eyes sting less. This is the smell of endurance rather than urgency. The fire is not trying to impress now. It is trying to last. You notice how fuel is chosen with care. Dry branches snap cleanly when broken. Damp wood is avoided or set aside. Nothing is wasted. Pieces that burn too quickly are saved for lighting. Dense chunks are reserved for the coldest hours just before dawn. Every choice is shaped by long experience passed from one generation to the next through observation. A curious detail, sometimes mentioned in studies of early hearths, is the possible use of slow-burning materials like peat or compacted plant matter in certain regions. These fuels do not flare brightly, but they hold heat for hours. You imagine how valuable that steady warmth would be on a night like this when sleep comes in fragments and fire must be dependable. Wind is the greatest threat. Even a slight shift can change everything. You feel it brush past your cheek, testing the edge of the firelight. Immediately people adjust. Bodies move to block drafts. Hides are repositioned. Someone adds a piece of fuel at just the right angle to strengthen the flame rather than scatter it. There is no conversation about these decisions. Everyone knows what to do. Silence here is not ignorance. It is efficiency. Words cost energy. So does unnecessary movement. The night teaches restraint. Experts continue to debate whether early humans had designated firekeepers or if responsibility rotated naturally through the group. Watching now, it feels fluid. One person tends the fire while others rest, then another takes over. No ceremony, no announcement. Just an unspoken understanding that the flame must always be watched by someone who's alert enough to care. Your own eyelids grow heavy. The warmth tempts you into deeper rest, but you resist fully giving in. You have learned that sleep and fire are uneasy companions. Too much sleep invites disaster. Too little breaks the body down over time. Balance is everything. The crackle of embers becomes your soundtrack. Pop. Hiss. A soft collapse as a charred piece settles inward. Each sound tells you the fire is still alive. You listen the way someone else might listen, for breathing in a dark room. You tuck your hands back under your coverings, trusting the fire to do its work without constant interference. This trust is earned. You have seen flames die from neglect, but you have also seen them endure when treated properly. Tonight they seem cooperative. There is a moment when the wind rises again stronger this time. Sparks scatter briefly. Your heart jumps, but hands move quickly. Ash is shifted. Fuel is adjusted. The fire steadies. Relief washes through you, quiet but real. Fire is work, but it is also teacher. It rewards patience, it punishes haste, it demands respect. Over countless nights like this, one human's learned its moods as intimately as they learned their own. As the embers glow steadily and the wind calms once more, you allow yourself to rest a little deeper. The flame is smaller now, but stronger in its own way. It will carry you through the coldest hours if you continue to care for it. You settle in, muscles easing, just slightly, ears still tuned to every sound. The fire holds, you hold with it. The night continues, but you are ready. As the night presses on, you begin to shift away from the open air, drawn toward the shelter that waits nearby. Fire alone cannot fight the cold forever. Wind steals heat too efficiently. Even the best flame struggles when exposed. Shelter is the second half of survival, the quiet partner that works alongside fire rather than competing with it. You step carefully, mindful of uneven ground hidden beneath snow and ash. The shelter is low and unassuming. Nothing about it stands out dramatically. That is the point. It is built to disappear into the landscape, to block wind without advertising its presence. You duck slightly as you enter, feeling the temperature change almost immediately. The air inside is still. That stillness feels like relief. Evidence from Ice Age campsites shows that early humans constructed temporary shelters, using wood frames, animal hides, and packed earth. These structures trapped body heat and reduced exposure to wind chill, which can dramatically increase heat loss. Inside, the cold feels slower, less aggressive. It is still there, but it no longer rushes at you from all sides. The smell inside the shelter is different. Less smoke, more earth, damp hide, old ash, the scent of people who have rested here before. It is not unpleasant. It smells like continuity. You find a place along the edge, careful not to block the entrance completely. Airflow matters. Too sealed and smoke or stale air builds up. Too open and the cold creeps back in. You notice how the walls are angled slightly inward. This is not accidental. Sloping sides help prevent wind from forcing its way inside and also keep the structure stable under snow. Simple physics, learned without formulas. Trial and error refined into instinct. A fascinating detail sometimes noted by researchers is the possible use of mammoth bones as structural supports in some Ice Age shelters, especially in treeless regions. These massive bones, arranged carefully, could form strong frames for hides and earth. You imagine the weight and solidity they would provide, turning remains of hunted animals into protection for the living. Inside, people arrange themselves deliberately. Those most vulnerable to the cold, children and elders, are placed away from drafts closer to shared warmth. Others form a loose barrier along the edges. No one needs to be told where to sit. Roles are understood through experience rather than instruction. There is a quiet debate among scholars about how permanent these shelters were. Some argue they were used for weeks or months at a time. Others believe many were rebuilt frequently as groups moved with the seasons. Sitting here, you suspect both are true. Survival favors flexibility. What works now may not work later. The ground inside the shelter is layered. Grass, leaves, furs. Each layer adds insulation, separating your body from the frozen earth. You sink into it slightly, the pressure spreading warmth across your hips and back. It is not softness that matters here. It is separation from the cold below. Sound behaves differently inside. The wind is muted. Footsteps outside thud softly rather than crunching sharply. The world feels smaller, safer. Your breathing slows in response. Muscles unclench just a little. Someone adjusts a hide near the entrance, narrowing the gap as the wind shifts again. Light from the fire outside flickers through briefly, then dims. The shelter holds. You feel a quiet satisfaction in that. This structure, simple as it is, stands between you and a night that would otherwise drain you dry. A lesser-known idea occasionally discussed is whether early shelters were oriented intentionally toward or away from prevailing winds. Some sites suggest consistent patterns hinting at an early understanding of microclimates. You think about how much attention must have gone into choosing this spot. A few steps in the wrong direction could mean far colder nights. You settle in among others, shoulders touching warmth, overlapping. The shelter amplifies this effect. Heat that would have drifted away now lingers, shared by everyone inside. Community becomes insulation. Fatigue deepens. The shelter allows it. Outside you would remain tense. Here you can afford to rest a little more fully. Still, no one disappears entirely into sleep. The night demands at least one open ear, one aware mind. As you close your eyes briefly, the world reduces to sensations. Warm breath, rough hide, the faint crackle of fire outside. The shelter creaks softly as it responds to the cold. It holds steady. You're no longer fighting the night directly. You're negotiating with it using wood-hide earth and shared knowledge to carve out a pocket of survivable warmth. For now, that is enough. You edge closer to the stone mouth that opens in the hillside, half hidden by shadow and snow. From a distance, a cave looks like an invitation. Solid, ancient, unmoving. Stone does not shiver in the wind. Stone does not rot. And yet as you step nearer, you feel a hesitation settle in your chest. Caves promise safety, but they also demand caution. Inside, the temperature changes again. Not warm exactly, but stable. The biting edge of the wind disappears the moment you cross the threshold. The air is cool and damp, carrying the scent of mineral and old water. You exhale slowly, watching your breath curl and fade. In a world of extremes, consistency feels like a gift. Archaeological layers found deep inside European and Asian caves show repeated human use during Ice Age periods. Hearths, tools, and food remains suggest people return to the same shelters over and over, sometimes across generations. You imagine how familiar this space must feel to those who have slept here before. The walls hold memories in soot and scratches, but caves are never fully yours. The floor slopes unevenly. Water drips steadily from the ceiling, a soft, relentless tapping that echoes in the dark. Moisture clings to everything, seeping into hides if you're not careful. Damp cold creeps deeper than dry cold, and you feel it settling into your bones if you sit too still. You notice how people avoid the deepest recesses. Smoke gathers there, lingering without escape. Instead, camps form closer to the entrance where fresh air circulates and firelight can still reach the walls. Balance again. Shelter without suffocation. Protection without entrapment. There is also the matter of who else might call this place home. Scratches on stone. Old bones gnawed clean. A faint musky smell that does not belong to humans. Bears are known to have used caves for hibernation during the Ice Age, and not all of them vacated politely when people arrived. You scan the shadows, instinctively alert to shapes that do not belong. An intriguing detail sometimes noted by researchers is the discovery of arranged stones or markings near cave entrances, possibly serving as territorial signals or spiritual markers. You do not know their meaning, but you feel their intention. This space has rules, spoken or not. There is ongoing disagreement among experts about whether caves were preferred living spaces or emergency refuges. Some evidence suggests long-term occupation. Other findings hint at short stays used mainly during the harshest conditions. Standing here, you suspect the truth shifts with circumstance. A calm night might favour open shelters. A storm might drive everyone into stone. Sound behaves strangely inside. Every movement echoes softly, multiplied and delayed. It makes you more aware of yourself, of every shift and breath. Silence here feels heavier, thicker. You lower your voice without thinking, even though there is no reason to speak at all. Fire behaves differently too. Smoke clings to the ceiling, leaving dark stains that layer over time. Those stains become records. Someone once slept here. Someone once endured a night much like this one. You feel connected to them in a quiet, wordless way. You choose your place, carefully avoiding damp patches and sharp stone. Hides are laid down thickly, more for insulation than comfort. The rock beneath remains cold, unyielding. You keep your back from touching it directly. Stone steals warmth mercilessly. As the night deepens, the cave holds steady. No wind, no drifting snow. Outside feels far away, almost unreal. That distance is comforting, but also unsettling. You remind yourself not to relax too completely. Caves can flood. Smoke can choke. Predators can wander in. Still for now, the stone walls feel like allies. They stand between you and the worst of the night, offering a pause in the constant battle against the cold. You listen to the slow drip of water, the muted crackle of fire, the steady breathing around you. You are sheltered, but not surrendered. The cave gives you time, not certainty. And in the Ice Age, time is often the most valuable gift of all. You settle deeper into the warmth of what you're wearing, becoming more aware of the layers between your skin and the cold air. These coverings are not fashion. They are survival shaped by hands that understand wind moisture and time. Animal skins hang heavy on your shoulders, smelling faintly of fat and smoke, stiff in places, soft in others, where they have been worked again and again. Long before woven cloth existed, people relied on hides and furs to endure cold climates. Evidence from Ice Age sites shows cut marks and scraping patterns that indicate careful skin processing. This was not crude wrapping, it was skilled preparation. You feel the difference in how the hide drapes, how it blocks air while still allowing you to move. The fur side faces inward, trapping warm air close to your body. The outer skin faces the elements, deflecting wind and shedding moisture. This simple arrangement makes a remarkable difference. When you shift, you can feel heat building beneath the layers, a small pocket of warmth you carry with you. You run your fingers along the edge of the hide, feeling uneven thickness where different parts of the animal were used. Nothing is uniform. Each piece tells a story of the hunt that provided it. In a way, you're wearing the memory of that animal, its strength transformed into your protection. A lesser discussed detail is that some furs work better than others in extreme cold. Arctic fox and wolf fur, for example, retain heat exceptionally well. You do not know the scientific reasons, but you know the result. Certain hides are saved for the coldest nights or for those most at risk. Experience has sorted what works from what does not. Scholars continue to debate when humans began wearing fitted garments rather than loose drapes. Some argue tailored clothing appeared surprisingly early, driven by harsh climates. Others suggest looser coverings dominated for much longer. As you adjust your hide, pinning it closed with a simple fastener, you feel somewhere between the two. Not fully shaped clothing, but not careless either. The weight of the fur is comforting. It presses down gently, reminding you of your own body heat rising to meet it. You notice how people avoid leaving skin exposed. Wrists are tucked in. Necks are wrapped. Even ears are protected. Small exposed areas lose heat quickly and ache almost immediately. There is also maintenance to consider. Wet fur is dangerous. Moisture steals heat and freezes stiff. You check for dampness, constantly drying edges near the fire when needed, careful not to scorch the hide. Burnt fur smells terrible and loses its insulating power. An interesting observation made by some researchers is that wearing multiple thin layers may have been more effective than a single thick one. Layering traps air between surfaces, increasing insulation. You feel that now. Several lighter hides overlap to create warmth that a single heavy skin could not manage alone. As the night wears on, the hides grow warmer, shaped by your body. They mold to your shoulders and back, becoming more comfortable with time. This is not luxury, but it is relief. Without these layers, the cold would find every weakness. You notice children bundled more heavily wrapped, almost completely, leaving only eyes visible. Elders too receive the best furs. This is not sentiment, it is strategy. Protect those who cannot generate as much heat on their own. The smell of fur smoke and human presence blends into something familiar and grounding. It becomes part of the night, part of the rhythm of survival. You associate that scent with safety now, just as strongly as you associate firelight with warmth. You shift slightly, redistributing layers as pressure builds in one spot. The movement sends a small puff of warm air upward, and you smile faintly at the sensation. Such a small thing, but here small things matter. Wrapped in these skins, you feel buffered from the worst of the Ice Age night. Not immune, but defended. The cold presses in, testing seams and edges, but for now it is held back by fur knowledge and care. Your fingers ache as you work even close to the fire. Fine movements are the first thing the cold tries to steal from you, and yet these are the movements that matter most right now. Sewing is slow, deliberate, and essential. A loose edge lets in wind. A bad seam wastes warmth. So you focus breathing steadily, hands moving with care. In the firelight, a bone needle glints softly. It is smooth from use, shaped carefully from the leg bone of a bird or small animal. Archaeologists have uncovered such needles at Ice Age sites across Eurasia, some dating back more than 40,000 years. Their presence suggests not just clothing, but tailored clothing. Sitting here guiding sinew through hide, you understand how important that distinction is. The thread you use is not thread as you know it now. It is sinew stripped from muscle, dried, then softened again. Strong, flexible, and surprisingly durable. When pulled tight, it binds hide to hide with a firmness that survives movement, moisture, and time. You tug, gently testing each stitch. Failure is not an option. You work close to the fire, but not too close. Heat helps your fingers move, but too much dries and cracks the hide. Balance again. Always balance. Someone nearby holds a piece of skin taut while you stitch, making the work easier. This is not a solitary task. It rarely is. There is a quiet rhythm to sewing. Pierce, pull, tighten, repeat. The sound is soft, almost soothing. It gives your mind something to rest on, something steady. Outside the circle of firelight, the cold waits patiently. But here you are, busy improving your chances. Some researchers point out that sewing may have been one of the key technologies that allowed humans to expand into colder regions more successfully than other species. Loose hides only do so much. Shaped garments seal in warmth, protect joints, and allow movement without constant readjustment. You feel that truth in your hands as the garment takes form. A lesser-known observation is that needles themselves vary widely in size and shape, suggesting different stitching techniques and purposes. Fine needles for tight seams, thicker ones for rough repairs. You choose carefully, knowing that the wrong tool can tear hide or weaken a joint. There is still disagreement among specialists about who primarily did this work. Some argue sewing was largely done by women. Others caution against such assumptions, noting that survival tasks were likely shared. Watching now, it seems obvious that skill matters more than identity. Whoever can sew well sews. The cold does not care who holds the needle. You pause occasionally to flex your fingers, restoring circulation. Numbness creeps in quickly if you stop moving. You breathe on your hands, then return to work. The firelight dances across the surface of the hide, revealing scars and marks from the animal's life. These imperfections are worked around, incorporated rather than discarded. Waste is a luxury no one here can afford. As the garment grows more complete, you imagine how it will change someone's night. Fewer drafts, less shivering, more rest. Sewing is not dramatic, but it saves lives quietly, stitch by stitch. There is also creativity here. Small choices in shape and fastening matter. A flap added here, a fold reinforced there. Over time, these choices accumulate into styles, traditions, preferences. Even in the Ice Age, people express identity through function. An unusual idea sometimes raised is that decorative stitching may have appeared alongside practical sewing much earlier than expected. Patterns in seams contrasting sinew, deliberate repetition. You glance at a finished piece nearby and notice a subtle rhythm in the stitches, not random. Someone cared how it looked even if warmth came first. The cold presses in harder as the night deepens. You feel it on your back along your calves. But the work continues. Finished pieces are passed around, tested, adjusted. Someone pulls on a sleeve, nods in approval. Another tightens a seam. This is quality control in its earliest form. When your fingers finally refuse to cooperate, you stop. Pushing further would risk mistakes. You tuck the needle away carefully, knowing how valuable it is. Losing it would be a serious setback. You slide the newly sewn garment over your shoulders. The difference is immediate. Less air movement, more trapped warmth. The hide settles against you as if it belongs there, shaped for your body by human intention rather than chance. You lean back, letting the fire warm your hands at last. Sewing has done its job for now. The night still stretches ahead, but you're better prepared to meet it. In a world ruled by cold, a few careful stitches can mean the difference between enduring and failing. The fire burns lower now, and without being told you move closer to the others. Bodies shift, drawing inward like a tide responding to gravity. This closeness is not awkward. It is expected. When the cold tightens, distance becomes wasteful. Warmth shared is warmth multiplied. You settle beside someone, your shoulder brushing theirs. Another person presses in on your other side. Soon heat pools in the narrow spaces between bodies, rising slowly, steadily. The difference is immediate. Where the cold had been gnawing at your ribs, there is now a gentle spreading warmth. It is not perfect, but it is enough to ease the ache. Human bodies give off heat constantly. In an environment like this, that heat is as valuable as fire. Long before insulation materials or heated shelters, people relied on each other to regulate temperature through proximity. You feel it working now, your breathing syncing unconsciously with those around you. You're careful how you position yourself. Backs touch backs. Knees tuck in, no one sprawls. This is not about comfort in the modern sense. It is about efficiency. Every exposed surface is an opportunity for heat to escape. Curling inward reduces that loss. There is also trust here. You are vulnerable when you sleep close to others, yet the alternative is worse. Alone you would lose heat too quickly. Together you form a single larger organism better able to endure the night. This cooperation did not need philosophy to justify it. The cold did that job. Some anthropologists have suggested that habitual close sleeping may have played a role in strengthening social bonds among early humans. Physical closeness builds familiarity, tolerance, and a sense of shared fate. You sense that here, breathing together, shifting together, enduring together. A small, often overlooked detail is how people arrange themselves based on heat output. Those who generate more warmth tend to sit toward the outside of the group. Those who struggle to stay warm are protected in the middle. This pattern appears again and again, not because someone enforces it, but because it works. There is still uncertainty among researchers about how structured these arrangements were. Some imagine strict roles. Others see flexible, constantly changing patterns. Watching now, it feels fluid. Someone moves, others adjust. No one complains. The group reshapes itself without discussion. As fatigue deepens, heads rest briefly against shoulders. Eyes close for a few minutes at a time. No one sinks fully into deep sleep. The body knows better. Full unconsciousness in this cold is risky. Instead, rest comes in waves. Drift, wake, adjust, drift again. You become aware of the sound of breathing around you, soft, steady, occasionally interrupted by a cough or a sigh. These sounds are reassuring. Silence would be worse. Silence would suggest someone has gone still in the wrong way. There is also smell. Human warmth carries a scent. Sweat, smoke, hide, and skin mingle into something familiar. You associate it with safety now. It is the smell of survival of nights that end in mourning rather than tragedy. An unusual thought crosses your mind. Some researchers have wondered whether close sleeping influenced the development of communication and empathy. When you're physically connected, you notice small changes in others. A shiver, a sudden stillness, a restless shift. You respond without thinking, pulling closer, adjusting hide-sharing heat. The cold presses harder at the edges of the group, but inside the cluster it loses some of its power. You feel your muscles relax slightly, conserving energy. This is as close to comfort as the Ice Age offers. Someone near you murmurs softly, not words exactly, more a sound of reassurance. No one answers, but the sound settles everyone. Language is not always necessary. Presence is enough. You adjust your position one last time, finding a balance where warmth spreads evenly and pressure eases from your joints. Your eyes close again just for a moment. The fire crackles faintly. Bodies breathe together. For now, the night is held at bay not by flame or stone, but by human closeness. And in this shared warmth you endure. The warmth you share settles into a steady presence, and with it comes a quiet sense of responsibility. Not everyone here generates heat the same way. You feel it immediately when someone shifts, creating a small gap, and colder air slips in. It is subtle, but noticeable. You adjust instinctively, closing the space because you know who needs that warmth most. Children sleep closer to the center. Their bodies are smaller, their heat fades faster, and they cannot regulate temperature as well as adults. You feel a child's back against your chest, the rhythm of their breathing uneven but calm. Someone has wrapped them in the softest fur available, layered thickly, almost swallowing their frame. This is not indulgence. It is strategy shaped by hard nights and harder lessons. Older members of the group are positioned carefully too. Age changes how the body handles cold. Muscles thin. Circulation slows. You have seen what happens when elders are left too exposed. Confusion. Shaking that does not stop. Quiet slipping away before anyone notices. So tonight, as on many nights, they are guarded by warmth and proximity. Across the firelight you see someone gently adjust a hide around an older figure's shoulders. No words are exchanged, none are needed. Care here is practical, but it is also deeply ingrained. Survival has taught everyone that protecting the vulnerable protects the group itself. Lose experience, lose knowledge, lose the memory of what worked last winter. Archaeological findings from Ice Age sites often show long-term occupation layers that suggest multiple generations lived and survived together. This hints at a social structure that valued continuity. Sitting here, you feel that continuity physically. Warmth moves outward from the center, then back again, circulating through bodies like a shared resource. There is a small fire-tending task underway just beyond the shelter opening. One person remains alert, eyes open, posture upright. They are not the strongest or the youngest. They are the most reliable. Watchfulness is another form of care. Let the fire fail, and all this careful arrangement collapses. Some anthropologists have proposed that caregiving behaviours, especially toward non-working members of the group, were essential to human success in extreme climates. This is not sentimentality. It is efficiency over time. A child kept alive becomes an adult contributor. An elder preserved carries stories, roots, warnings and techniques no one else remembers fully. There is still disagreement among researchers about how evenly such care was distributed. Some argue resources were tightly controlled and only selectively shared. Others see evidence of surprisingly broad cooperation. From where you sit, it feels situational. In a brutal night like this, compassion and practicality are the same thing. You listen to the small sounds of sleep around you. A soft whimper from a child that fades as someone shifts closer. A deep exhale from an older chest that seems to ease with added warmth. These sounds register instantly. Your body responds before your thoughts do. The cold outside does not pause. It presses against the shelter walls, testing seams, probing for weakness. Inside, you counter it with quiet vigilance. Every few minutes, someone stirs, checks, positions, smooths a hide, closes a gap. This constant low-level motion keeps blood flowing and attention sharp. A lesser-known observation from some excavation sites is the presence of extra bedding material clustered in specific areas, possibly indicating designated sleeping spots for those needing more insulation. You imagine how such arrangements would develop naturally. Trial, failure, adjustment, success, repeated until it becomes habit. Your own muscles ache faintly now, a dull reminder of the work already done tonight. Sowing, gathering, fire tending, the body wants rest. You allow it in small doses, trusting the others to remain alert while you drift briefly. In these moments, time loses its shape. Minutes blur. You wake, adjust, sleep again. Each cycle feels shorter than the last. Yet the night still stretches on. Dawn is a promise, but not an immediate one. There is something grounding about this shared endurance. You're not fighting the cold alone. You are part of a system that redistributes warmth, attention, and care where it is needed most. That system is fragile, but it works. A quiet thought surfaces. Some scholars have wondered whether such nights shaped human empathy itself. When survival depends on noticing subtle changes in others, awareness becomes instinct. You sense that instinct now humming just beneath consciousness. Another shift nearby. You tighten your hold slightly, not enough to wake anyone, just enough to seal in warmth. The child against you sighs and settles. The elder across the circle breathes more evenly. The fire crackles softly. The shelter holds. The group remains intact. And through careful placement, shared heat, and constant attention, the coldest hours of the night begin to pass one breath at a time. Hunger creeps in quietly layered beneath the cold. You feel it as a hollow warmth in your belly, a steady reminder that heat does not come only from fire or bodies pressed together. It also comes from within. Food is fuel, and on nights like this, fuel determines how long your body can keep producing warmth before it begins to fail. Someone passes a small portion of food along the circle. It is dense and greasy, nothing delicate about it. Fat clings to your fingers as you take it, and you do not wipe them clean right away. Every bit matters. The taste is strong, almost overwhelming, but comforting in its own way. You chew slowly, letting it dissolve, feeling warmth spread faintly as your body begins to work on it. Animal fat was a crucial part of Ice Age diets, especially in cold regions. Muscle alone does not provide enough energy to sustain body heat over long periods. Archaeological evidence shows that early humans often targeted fatty animals or specific body parts like marrow-rich bones. You remember cracking those bones earlier, the sound sharp and satisfying, the reward thick and nourishing. The food smells heavy and smoky, infused with fire and thyme. It sticks to your teeth. You welcome that too. Lingering flavour means lingering energy. Swallowing sends a small pulse of warmth downward. Subtle, but real. You notice how portions are measured. Not equal, but thoughtful. Those who shiver more receive a bit extra. Children get small but frequent amounts. Elders are encouraged to eat even when appetite fades. No one argues. Everyone understands what is at stake. Some researchers have suggested that early humans developed a preference for high-fat food specifically because of cold stress. Not just taste, but survival-shaped desire. Sitting here, you do not crave sweetness or variety. You crave density, something that burns slowly inside you. There is ongoing uncertainty about how regularly people ate during the night versus conserving food until morning. You sense that it depends on conditions. Tonight the cold justifies it. Burning calories now keeps muscles warm and minds alert. Saving food would make sense only if the body could endure without it. A curious detail sometimes mentioned in studies of Ice Age nutrition is the possible use of frozen meat stored outdoors as a kind of natural preservation. In temperatures like this, spoilage slows to a crawl. You imagine how different food feels when it is both sustenance and storage, when the environment itself becomes part of the strategy. Chewing warms your jaw, swallowing steadies your breathing. You feel less brittle, less hollow. The effect is not dramatic, but it is cumulative. Fire warms the outside, food warms the inside. Together they form a more reliable defense. You lick your fingers, clean careful not to waste even a trace. Fat leaves a slight sheen on your lips, protecting them from cracking. You notice others doing the same, rubbing residue onto dry skin as an extra barrier against the cold. Nothing is separate here. Eating warmth and protection blur together. The act of sharing food also sharpens awareness. You watch who eats quickly, who hesitates, who pushes food away. Appetite can signal strength or weakness. You file these observations away without labeling them. Information matters even if it is never spoken aloud. As digestion begins, drowsiness follows. Food tells the body it can afford to rest a little. You allow your head to tilt forward briefly, eyes closing. The warmth from shared bodies feels deeper now, reinforced from within. Some anthropologists have proposed that communal eating reinforced trust and cooperation in extreme environments. You feel that trust now not as an idea but as a physical sensation. The knowledge that someone would not let you starve while you freeze is deeply calming. Outside, the cold continues its work, indifferent and patient. Inside, your body burns fuel, steadily producing the heat you need to last another hour, then another. Hunger recedes for now, replaced by a slow spreading warmth. You shift slightly, settling back into the rhythm of the group. Breath, heat, quiet chewing sounds fading into stillness. The night is not over, but you are better equipped to face what remains of it. The cold has a sound of its own, and as the night deepens, you begin to hear it more clearly. It is not just silence. It is the faint groan of ice shifting somewhere far away, the brittle snap of frozen branches contracting, the whisper of wind skating across hard snow. These sounds drift through the darkness and settle in your ears, sharp and thin, impossible to ignore once noticed. You pause listening. Sound travels differently now. The air feels tighter, carrying noise farther than it should. A movement that would be nothing during the day becomes amplified at night. A footstep crunches like breaking glass. A cough echoes longer than expected. You learn quickly to be still, to let the night speak first. People who have studied Ice Age environments note that glaciers were not silent giants. They cracked, shifted, and sometimes thundered as pressure built and released. You imagine those sounds rolling across the landscape, low and distant, unsettling, in a way that seeps into your chest rather than startling outright. Even here, sheltered and clustered, you feel a faint vibration through the ground, or perhaps you only imagine it. Your senses sharpen in response. Vision fades beyond the firelight, but hearing stretches outward. You tilt your head slightly, trying to separate harmless noises from ones that matter. Wind against stone, ice against ice, something moving with intent. You remind yourself not to let imagination outrun reason, but you also know that ignoring sound is a luxury you cannot afford. The shelter creaks softly as the temperature drops further. Materials contract, hides stiffen, wood shifts in small complaining noises. None of it signals danger, but all of it keeps you alert. The night never lets you forget it is there. You notice how people react to these sounds differently. Some remain perfectly still, conserving energy, trusting familiarity. Others glance up, eyes reflecting firelight scanning shadows. No one panics. Fear here is quiet, contained, shaped into awareness rather than chaos. There is a rhythm to the night sounds, a long pause, a faint crack, another pause. The wind rises briefly, then settles. You begin to recognize patterns the way one learns the breathing of someone sleeping nearby. This familiarity soothes you more than silence ever could. At some point, a distant howl threads through the cold air. It is thin and wavering, carried from far beyond the reach of firelight. You feel a tightening in your stomach, but it does not bloom into alarm. Predators announce themselves often enough. Silence would be more concerning. Sound means distance. Sound means time. You shift slightly, careful not to disturb those leaning against you. Your muscles tense, then ease. Listening takes effort, but it also keeps you anchored. It gives your mind something to hold on to when fatigue threatens to blur the edges of awareness. Somewhere ice settles again with a hollow pop. You exhale slowly. That sound has no scent, no movement following it. Just the land adjusting to the cold. The world here is not static. It is constantly responding to temperature pressure and time just as you are. There is a strange intimacy in hearing the landscape breathe. Modern nights are filled with artificial noise. Here every sound belongs to something real. Wind, ice, stone, fur, breath. You feel smaller because of it, but also more connected. A quieter sound reaches you next. The soft rasp of someone stirring. A whispered exhale. The faint brush of hide against hide. These human noises ground you, pulling your attention back inward. Whatever moves out there, you're not alone in facing it. Your ears ache faintly from the cold. You cup them briefly with your hands, warming them, then return to listening. This vigilance is tiring, but it is part of the cost of making it through the night intact. As hours pass, the sounds blend together into a low, constant presence. The night hums. You no longer react to every crack or whisper. You absorb them, filtering threat from background. This ability did not come easily. It was learnt night after night, mistake after mistake. You let your eyes close again just for a moment, trusting your ears to keep watch. The cold speaks softly now, no longer shouting for attention. You breathe, listen, and wait, knowing that understanding the sounds of the Ice Age night is as important as any fire or shelter in keeping you alive until dawn. Fear does not arrive all at once. It slips in quietly, carried on imagination more than sound. In the flicker of firelight, shadows stretch and pull away from their sources, reshaping themselves into things that almost make sense. Your mind fills the gaps instinctively. Faces, movement, intent. You know better, and yet your pulse still quickens before settling again. This is where stories begin. Not announced, not formal. Someone shifts closer to the fire and lets out a low sound halfway between a sigh and a hum. Another responds with a few murmured words barely louder than breath. You do not catch every detail, but the tone matters more than content, calm, familiar, grounded. Long before writing existed, people used spoken stories to organize fear and pass time during the longest nights. The darkness invites the mind to wander into dangerous places. Stories guide it back. You feel your attention soften as the cadence settles into something predictable, like waves repeating against a shore. The tales are not heroic in the way later stories will be. They are practical. A hunter who ignored signs and paid for it. An animal tricked rather than fought. A warning wrapped in narrative. You listen, absorbing lessons without feeling lectured. This is how knowledge survives when memory is all you have. Firelight flickers across faces as the story continues. Expressions change. Someone smiles briefly. Someone else snorts quietly in recognition. These reactions remind you that fear is shared, and therefore lighter. It does not vanish, but it loses its sharpest edge. There is also ritual here, though. It does not announce itself as such. Certain phrases repeat. Certain pauses are expected. The same story might be told dozens of times across a lifetime, its details shifting slightly with each telling. You find comfort in that repetition. It means others have sat through nights like this before and lived to remember them. Some people believe that these quiet nighttime stories helped shape early belief systems, turning unknown dangers into characters and causes. You can feel how that might happen. When the cold feels alive and the dark feels watchful, giving them names makes them manageable. A small, almost playful sound escapes someone at the end of a sentence, a hint of humour. It is brief, but it changes the mood instantly. Laughter is rare here, but when it comes it is soft and careful, like a flame sheltered in cupped hands. It warms more than you expect. You notice how children lean in during these moments, eyes wide, absorbing more than just the words. They learn where fear belongs and where it does not. They learn that the night can be endured without panic. That lesson may be as important as any shelter or garment. There are things left unsaid too. Not every danger is named. Some topics are avoided entirely, either because they are too painful or too uncertain. Silence has its place in these exchanges. You sense where the story edges close to something heavier, then turns away. The cold presses in again as the fire dips lower, but the group remains settled. The story has done its work. Muscles ease, breathing slows, minds stay alert without spiraling. Someone adds a final line, barely audible, and the tale ends without ceremony. No one comments, there's no applause. The sound fades naturally back into the night. You find that your thoughts are quieter now. The shapes in the shadows lose their urgency. The unknown feels less personal. You still listen, you still watch. But you do so without the tight knot in your chest. Stories do not banish the cold or the dark. They simply change how you carry them. Wrapped in shared words and familiar rhythms, fear becomes another thing to manage, rather than something that manages you. You shift slightly, settling back into the warmth of the group. Firelight pulses, breath rises and falls around you. The night continues, but it no longer feels quite as heavy. The night outside the firelight is not empty. You know that without seeing anything move. The air carries smells faint but unmistakable, drifting in and out as the wind shifts. Old fur, wet breath, the sharp tang of animal musk layered beneath snow and ice. Predators do not need light to find you. Warmth alone is enough to announce your presence. You stay still listening. Somewhere beyond the edge of sight, something steps carefully, testing the ground. The sound is soft, deliberate. Not the careless crunch of a deer, but something slower, more controlled. Your muscles tense, then settle. Sudden movement would draw attention. Stillness keeps you ambiguous. Large carnivores shared this landscape with you. Wolves, cave lions, hyenas and bears all roamed Ice Age terrain, following herds and opportunities. Camps like yours were both risk and reward. Fire deterred many animals, but hunger has a way of overriding caution, especially in winter. The group reacts subtly. No one gasps, no one points. A few heads turn toward the sound. Someone near the fire shifts position to make the flames more visible without feeding them aggressively. Light matters. A steady glow signals alertness. A dying fire invites curiosity. You adjust your breathing, keeping it slow and quiet. The smell of cooked fat still hangs faintly in the air, tempting and dangerous. It carries far in the cold. You're aware now of how exposed warmth makes you, how survival always involves trade-offs. There is a shared memory in the group, unspoken but present. Everyone here has lost something to predators at some point. A kill stolen, a camp forced to move, a companion injured. These memories shape behavior more effectively than fear ever could. A low growl reaches your ears, distant but clear. It vibrates rather than echoes. Wolves, most likely. You imagine them circling testing boundaries, gauging risk. They are not monsters. They are calculating just as you are. Some researchers have noted that early humans may have positioned camps near natural barriers like cliffs, rivers, or dense brush to limit predator approaches. You think about where you are now. The shelter backs against rock. One side drops away sharply. Only a few directions remain open. That is not luck. You grip a tool loosely, not to use immediately, but to remind your body it is there. Stone, bone, wood. Simple but effective in the right moment. Others do the same. Weapons are not raised. That would signal weakness or panic. Readiness is quieter than that. The fire crackles softly, throwing sparks upward. You watch how the flames reflect in nearby eyes, human and otherwise. The fire is a language both sides understand. It says you are awake. It says you will not be easy. The sound outside shifts. Footsteps retreat slightly, then pause. A long silence follows. You do not relax yet. Predators often wait, testing patience as much as strength. There is a strange respect in these encounters. You are not prey in the simple sense. You are unpredictable, dangerous in groups, capable of defending yourself in ways animals do not fully understand. That uncertainty protects you as much as any weapon. A less obvious detail is how scent is managed. Ash is sometimes scattered around camp edges, old bones are moved farther away, waste is buried or burned. These practices reduce attraction. You remember doing this earlier without much thought. Habit formed by nights like this. No one speaks. Words would fracture the fragile balance. Instead, eyes meet briefly, then look away. Confirmation passes silently. Everyone is aware, everyone is ready. After a long stretch, the smell shifts. The musky edge fades, slightly carried off by a change in wind. You release a breath you did not realize you were holding. The danger has not vanished, but it has moved on, at least for now. Your body remains alert for a while longer. Adrenaline hums quietly under your skin, warming you almost as much as the fire. This too is part of survival. The body contributes heat when threatened, a side effect of readiness. Eventually tension eases. The night returns to its earlier rhythm, wind, ice, fire, breath. The memory of the encounter lingers, sharpening your respect for the darkness beyond the light. You adjust your position again, settling back into the group. The fire holds steady, the shelter remains intact. Predators prowl elsewhere, following paths older than you. Here for now, you remain unchallenged. The night has tested you and found you watchful. That is often enough to see another hour pass safely. Your hands matter more than almost anything else out here. Feet can be dragged. Teeth can manage when knives are dull, but hands are the difference between control and helplessness. As the night deepens and the cold stiffens joints, you become acutely aware of every finger, every knuckle, every small ache that warns of numbness creeping in. You flex your hands, slowly feeling resistance where there should be ease. The skin across your knuckles is tight and dry. If you lose sensation here, you lose the ability to tend fire repair hides grip tools. So you act early. Prevention is quieter than rescue. You reach for a tool not to use it yet, but to feel its weight. Stone warms more slowly than skin, but once it does, it holds that warmth longer. You cradle it briefly, letting heat pass back and forth. This exchange matters. Tools left in the cold steal warmth on contact. Tools kept close become extensions of the body rather than threats to it. Long before metal people learned how to shape stone with remarkable precision. Blades were sharp enough to slice hide cleanly. Scrapers fit the curve of the hand. Handles were wrapped or grooved for grip. These shapes were not accidental. They were refined through use through frozen fingers that demanded efficiency. You notice how tools are stored. Not left on bare ground, not abandoned in snow. They rest on hides near bodies close to firelight. Losing a tool here is not just inconvenient, it is dangerous. Finding it again with numb hands could cost more heat than you can spare. Someone nearby works a scraper along a piece of hide, short, careful strokes. The sound is soft and rhythmic. The motion keeps blood flowing through their fingers. Work itself becomes a defense against cold as long as it is controlled. Too fast and sweat forms. Too slow and stiffness sets in. There are simple tricks that help. Rubbing hands with fat to protect skin. Pressing fingers into warm armpits briefly to restore feeling. Tucking tools inside clothing when moving between tasks. None of these are explained aloud. They are copied, absorbed, passed on silently. You remember how earlier in the evening someone used a split piece of wood to handle hot stones from the fire. Not sophisticated, but effective. Hot stones placed near the body wrapped carefully release warmth slowly. Stones mishandled burn skin, or are dropped uselessly into snow. Even heat requires respect. Some tools serve more than one purpose on nights like this. A digging stick becomes a fire poker. A knife becomes a signal of readiness. A bone awl repairs hide and doubles as a fastener. Multi-purpose objects reduce the need for movement, reduce exposure, reduce risk. You test your grip again, squeezing and releasing. The ache has softened. Sensation returns gradually, a prickling warmth that is almost painful before it becomes comfortable. You welcome that pain. It means blood is flowing. It means your hands are still yours. There is quiet disagreement among people about how much work should be done at night. Some prefer to save energy doing only what is necessary. Others keep busy deliberately believing that motion staves off cold better than stillness. You find yourself somewhere between. Small tasks, purposeful movements, nothing wasted. You watch someone repair a tear in a hide with thick stitches. The needle is harder to control now, fingers tremble slightly. They stop before mistakes happen, tucking the needle away. Knowing when to stop is as important as knowing how to begin. An odd little habit catches your attention. Someone taps their fingers lightly against a stone in a slow pattern. Not nervous, intentional. The tapping keeps circulation moving, keeps awareness anchored. It looks simple, almost idle, but it works. Tools also provide reassurance. Holding something solid shaped by human intention reminds you that you're not facing the night empty-handed. The cold is vast, but it is not absolute. It can be resisted with stone, bone, wood, and knowledge. You think about how many hands shape the tools you use now, how many nights those hands endured. The tools carry that history in their edges and polish, smooth where countless fingers have held them, sharp where survival demanded it. As the cold deepens again, you place your hands briefly near the fire, rotating them slowly. Palm, back, fingers spread, fingers curled. You do not rush. You have learned that impatience costs more than it saves. Satisfied, you tuck your hands back under layers tool still within reach. The ache fades to warmth. You feel steadier now, more capable. The night continues its slow test, but your fingers are ready to answer. For now that is enough. The fire burns, the shelter holds, your hands remain nimble, and in a world where small failures spiral quickly, that small success feels quietly enormous, your breath becomes something you cannot ignore. In the cold, it announces itself with every exhale blooming into pale clouds that drift upward and vanish. You watch it without meaning to noticing how fast it forms, how long it lingers. Breathing is no longer automatic background noise. It is visible proof that you're alive and losing heat at the same time. Each breath pulls cold air deep into your chest. It feels sharp at first, then numbing. You instinctively slow down, shortening your inhales, letting air warm slightly before it reaches your lungs. Fast breathing would cool you too quickly. You've learned this the hard way before lungs burning, body shivering uncontrollably after a burst of panic or effort. Some people pull fur up over their mouths, creating a small pocket where breath can warm the next inhale. You try it feeling moisture build almost immediately. The inside of the hide grows damp, then stiffens as frost forms along the edges. It is a trade-off. Warmer air, but added moisture that must be managed. You adjust often, lifting the covering to let it dry near the fire before lowering it again. The sound of breathing fills the shelter softly. Slow exhales, occasional coughs. A child's breath comes in uneven spurts, then steadies as someone shifts closer. These sounds reassure you more than silence ever could. Breathing means circulation. Breathing means awareness. Breathing means no one has slipped too far into the cold yet. You become aware of how breath changes with effort. When someone tends the fire or adjusts the shelter, their breathing quickens, steam pouring from their mouth in thick bursts. They pause often, letting it slow again before continuing. No one rushes. Rushing wastes warmth and steals air. There is a quiet understanding that breath must be conserved as carefully as fuel. Even speech is measured. Long explanations are rare. Short phrases, gestures. A glance is often enough. Talking too much cools the body and dries the throat. Words are chosen only when they matter. In extreme cold, moisture becomes dangerous. Breath carries water out of the body constantly. Over hours that loss adds up. Lips crack. Throats ache. You lick your lips sparingly, knowing saliva will freeze quickly and make things worse. Someone passes a small container, and you take a careful sip of water that is barely liquid, Enough to soothe, not enough to chill you from the inside. You notice how elders breathe differently, slower, shallower. Their chests do not rise as much. You watch them closely. Breathing that slows too much can be as dangerous as breathing too fast. Someone nearby shifts, placing a warm hand briefly against an older person's back, encouraging deeper breaths without saying a word. At times, your breath fogs your vision, clouding the firelight for a moment before clearing. It makes the world feel smaller, more intimate. Everything exists within a few feet. Beyond that, shapes blur into shadow and cold. You remember a night long ago when someone fell asleep too deeply. Their breathing grew shallow, almost imperceptible. By the time anyone noticed, it was nearly too late. That memory keeps you alert now. You check faces instinctively, watching chests rise and fall in the flicker of the fire. Some people hum quietly as they breathe a low sound that vibrates in the chest. It keeps air moving steadily and calms the mind. You try it, feeling the gentle resonance warm your throat slightly. The sound is barely audible, but it steadies you. Breath also carries scent. You smell smoke on every exhale mixed with fat and fur. It coats the inside of your nose, familiar and grounding. You associate that smell with safety now. Clean air would feel wrong exposed. As the night deepens, the air inside the shelter grows thicker, warmed slightly by bodies and fire. You're careful not to let it grow stale. Someone lifts a hide briefly near the entrance, letting fresh air in despite the cold. Balance again. Too much warmth without circulation makes you drowsy in the wrong way. You become acutely aware of your own breathing when you drift towards sleep. It slows, deepens. You jerk awake slightly, forcing yourself to stay half aware. Full sleep would surrender control, so you float in between, letting breath anchor you to the present moment. Steam rises from damp hides as they dry near the fire, joining the clouds of breath. Moisture hangs in the air, glittering faintly in firelight before disappearing. You wipe frost from your eyelashes, laughing silently at how quickly it forms. Breathing is work tonight. Quiet, constant work. It warms you and cools you at the same time. It signals life and threatens it if ignored. You respect it now in a way you never did before. You place a hand over your chest, briefly feeling the steady rhythm beneath layers of hide. In, out, slow, controlled. You match your breathing to the person beside you without thinking about it. Sinking feels natural, calming. Outside the cold waits patiently ready to steal warmth from every careless exhale. Inside you manage breath like any other resource. Measured, shared, watched. As the hours inch forward, you grow used to the sight of your own breath rising and fading. It becomes part of the night's rhythm, as constant as the crackle of embers or the shift of bodies around you. You breathe, and with each careful breath you hold the cold at bay a little longer. By now you know that staying still forever is not an option. No matter how carefully you manage fire shelter, breath and food, there comes a point when the land itself demands movement. Cold settles deeper with each passing night. Snow builds. Game shifts its paths. Survival sometimes means leaving a place before it fully turns against you. You think about this often during nights like this one. Movement is dangerous. Travelling in the cold exposes you to wind exhaustion and uncertainty. Yet remaining too long in one spot carries its own risks. Resources thin out. Familiar shelters degrade. The ground grows harder, colder, less forgiving. Earlier in the season, the group arrived here deliberately. Tracks were followed, landmarks remembered, water sources checked. You remember how decisions were made quietly with long pauses, people staring at the landscape rather than each other. Movement was not rushed. It never is when mistakes cost lives. Cold shapes roots, valleys trap wind. Open plains steal heat mercilessly. Forests offer shelter but hide dangers. You have learned to read terrain by how it feels against your skin. A hollow that seems calm during the day can become a freezing basin at night. A ridge that looks exposed might catch enough sun to stay warmer after dark. There is no map, but there is memory. Someone knows that beyond the next rise lies a stand of trees where snow drifts less deeply. Someone else remembers a rock overhang that blocks wind from the north. These memories are shared repeatedly, reinforced through stories and gestures until they become communal knowledge rather than individual recollection. Movement is planned around daylight. Night travel is avoided whenever possible. You know too well how disorienting darkness becomes when combined with cold. Depth perception fails. Distances lie. Fatigue magnifies every misstep. So you wait. You endure nights like this one in preparation for travel at first light. Some nights, though, movement cannot wait. A storm builds faster than expected. Ice breaks beneath a shelter. Predators return too often. In those moments, the group moves carefully, tightly packed, keeping bodies close to share warmth, even while walking. Pace is slow. Stopping too long is avoided. Stopping too briefly is dangerous too. You adjust your posture instinctively when walking in cold. Shoulders forward, chin tucked, steps short and deliberate. Falling wastes energy and risks injury. Standing still wastes heat. Balance is everything. You remember a journey taken years ago during a winter far harsher than this one. The cold burned your lungs with every breath. Hides stiffened so badly they cracked when bent. Still movement saved you. The place you left behind froze solid, days later unlivable, even with fire. The idea of migration is not abstract here. It is not about distance. It is about timing. Moving at the wrong moment can kill you. Waiting too long can do the same. Experience teaches when to go, but certainty never arrives. Some people favour frequent movement, believing it keeps the body strong and the mind alert. Others prefer staying put, investing energy into reinforcing shelters and managing fire more carefully. These disagreements are quiet but real. The land often decides before any argument does. You watch how people prepare for travel, even during nights spent still. Tools are packed in the same place every time. Hides are folded in consistent ways. Nothing is scattered. If morning demands movement, chaos would cost precious heat and time. Even now, as you sit pressed among others, part of your attention remains outward. You note the wind direction, the smell of snow in the air, the way clouds thicken, dulling the stars. All of it feeds into the unspoken calculation of whether this place remains viable. Movement also changes the cold. Walking generates heat, but sweat threatens quickly. You learn to vent layers while moving, then close them again when stopping. This constant adjustment becomes second nature. You feel it in your hands, even now imagining the motions. There is comfort in knowing that you're not trapped. The land is harsh, but it is wide. Paths exist even if they are not marked. Others have walked them before you. You carry those footsteps forward in memory and muscle. As the night stretches on, the idea of movement settles quietly in your mind. Not urgency, not fear, just readiness. If dawn comes calm, you may stay. If it brings signs of worsening cold, you will go. You rest, knowing that survival here is not about resisting the world completely. It is about yielding at the right moments, moving when stillness becomes dangerous, staying when movement would cost too much. The fire crackles softly, breath clouds the air. Outside, the land waits unchanged and patient. You wait with it prepared to move when the Ice Age night releases its grip enough to let you pass safely onward. The land around you is not random. Even in the dark, even half asleep, you know where you are. Not by names or maps, but by feel. The slope beneath your feet, the way wind bends around stone, the smell of nearby water hidden under ice. This knowledge settles deep in your body, learned slowly, night after night, season after season. You remember places by what they offer when the sun disappears. Some valleys seem welcoming during the day, but become cold traps once darkness falls, collecting heavy air that presses down and refuses to move. Others stay surprisingly gentle, shielded by ridges or trees that break the wind just enough. You do not need to see these places to remember them. Your skin remembers for you. People around you carry this knowledge differently. One remembers how snow piles against a certain rock face. Another recalls where frost forms earliest along a riverbank. Someone else knows which ground stays softer beneath the surface, less likely to freeze solid by midnight. None of this is written down. It lives in gestures, habits, and the quiet confidence with which decisions are made. Earlier in the year, someone pointed to a stretch of land and shook their head slightly. No explanation followed, but no one questioned it either. You later learned why during a bitter night when wind tore through that area without resistance, flattening shelters and scattering embers. That small shake of the head was worth more than a long warning. Cold teaches memory efficiently. Mistakes imprint themselves deeply. A place where someone nearly froze becomes a place avoided forever. A hollow that held warmth during a brutal storm becomes a favoured refuge revisited whenever conditions allow. Over time, these memories layer into something like a shared map, invisible but reliable. You notice how children are taught this knowledge without formal lessons. They are brought along, asked to observe, encouraged to feel the difference between one spot and another. Why does this place feel calmer? Why does that one make your face ache faster? Questions are answered through experience rather than explanation. The stars help too when clouds allow them. Their slow movement marks time and direction. You learn which ones rise over familiar landmarks, which ones sink towards safer ground. On clear nights, the sky itself becomes a guide, steady and impartial. Weather patterns become familiar companions, the way certain winds bring dry cold while others carry moisture that clings to fur and bone. This smell that precedes heavy snow. The silence that often comes before extreme cold settles in. You feel these signs in your chest before your mind names them. Some people trust memory more than instinct. Others trust instinct first, memory second. Both approaches have value. Instinct reacts quickly. Memory offers perspective. Together they shape decisions that keep everyone alive a little longer. You think about how far back this knowledge reaches, how many winters it took to learn which places endure and which betray, how many nights someone paid the price for learning it the hard way. The land keeps those stories even when people do not. Even now sitting still, you are tracking change, the way the wind brushes the shelter, the subtle shift in temperature near the ground, the sound of ice settling somewhere downhill. All of it feeds into your understanding of where you are and how long this place will remain safe. You realize that this is why movement earlier felt deliberate rather than desperate. You did not arrive here by accident. You came because someone remembered this place holding well against nights like this one. That memory is proving itself again now hour by hour. There is a quiet satisfaction in that. Not pride exactly, but reassurance. The world is harsh, but it is not entirely unpredictable. It leaves clues for those patient enough to learn them. As the night deepens, you tuck that thought away. Even if this place fails tomorrow, you will remember how it felt when it worked. That memory will guide you elsewhere when needed. The fire dims slightly. Breath clouds rise and fall. Outside, the land holds steady, familiar in its dangers and its mercy. You rest, knowing that survival here is not only about strength or tools, but about remembering where warmth once waited in the dark. Cold leaves marks even when it does not kill. You have seen them often enough to recognize the signs early. Skin that pales too much, fingers that lose their shape, toes that refuse to move no matter how firmly you will them. Tonight you watch for these signs quietly, the way everyone does, because treatment must begin before damage settles in for good. You cradle your hands again, checking sensation. A dull ache is acceptable. Sharp pain means warmth is returning. Complete numbness is dangerous. You press your fingers into warm hide, then against your own skin, letting heat move slowly back into them. Rushing would hurt more than help. Care here is practical, not dramatic. No one panics over a cold injury unless it worsens suddenly. Experience has taught which discomforts fade and which signal real trouble. When someone stumbles or moves awkwardly, attention sharpens instantly. A limp might mean more than fatigue. It might mean frozen joints or loss of feeling. You remember how earlier in the evening someone warmed stones by the fire, then wrapped them carefully before placing them near another person's feet. Not directly on skin, always layered. Too much heat too fast can blister flesh already damaged by cold. Gentle warmth heals. Sudden heat harms. There are simple salves too, rendered fat rubbed into skin to seal out wind. Ash mixed lightly with grease to dry damp areas and reduce friction. These mixtures smell smoky and earthy, but they work. Skin treated this way cracks less and recovers faster. Long ago, someone learned that massaging cold injured limbs too aggressively can worsen damage. So hands move slowly, deliberately, coaxing blood back rather than forcing it. You watch this happen nearby, noting how the person receiving care relaxes, gradually tension easing as sensation returns. Illness behaves differently in the cold. Minor cuts heal slowly, infections linger longer. Bodies under constant cold stress have less energy to spare. That knowledge shapes behavior. Injuries are cleaned carefully. Sharp tools are handled with extra caution. A small wound here can become a serious problem if ignored. You notice how elders are checked more often. A hand placed briefly on a shoulder. A quiet look exchanged. Someone adjusts a hide to cover exposed skin. No one makes a show of it. Dignity matters even in survival. There is no formal healer among you, but there is shared knowledge. What works has been remembered. What failed has been abandoned. Over time, this becomes something like medicine, though no one calls it that. It is simply what you do to keep each other going. You think about a winter long past when frost took the tips of someone's fingers. They survived, but their hands never fully recovered. Still, they adapted. Tools were modified. Tasks shifted. Survival continued, altered but intact. Cold changes bodies, but it does not always end lives. You check your own feet, wiggling toes inside layers of fur. Sensation responds sluggishly, then improves. You make a mental note to adjust your position. Soon restore circulation before numbness deepens. Prevention again. Always prevention. Care also includes knowing when to stop. When to rest. When to let the body focus on healing rather than work. Someone who pushes too hard risks collapse later, when help may be harder to give. You watch for signs of that too. Slurred speech, unfocused eyes, a dangerous calm. The night wears on and small acts of care accumulate. A hide pulled higher, a stone repositioned, a limb gently warmed. None of it dramatic, all of it essential. You settle back into your place, reassured by the quiet competence around you. Cold injuries may threaten, but they are not mysterious. They are understood, managed, respected. Knowledge stands between discomfort and disaster. The fire holds steady. Breath clouds drift upward. Bodies remain intact, warm enough for now. You rest, trusting that if cold presses too hard, hands will reach out before it steals more than it should. Sleep comes in pieces here, never all at once. You drift, surface drift again. Each time your eyes close, part of you stays alert, listening for changes in sound or movement. This is not insomnia, it is adaptation. Deep sleep belongs to safer places and warmer times. Tonight vigilance is woven into rest. You feel it in your muscles. They loosen but not completely. One leg stays bent, ready to shift. Your hands remain tucked close, able to move without searching for warmth. Even your breathing seems lighter, as if your body knows not to sink too far. Around you, others follow the same pattern. Someone's head dips forward, then lifts again a few minutes later. Another person stirs, adjusts a hide, then stills. No one comments. This rhythm belongs to the night. Firelight fades and brightens as embers settle and catch again. Each change draws a few eyes open. A low fire invites action. A steady glow allows another brief rest. You're aware of how often you glance toward it even when half asleep. Night watch is not announced, but it happens. Someone always remains more awake than the rest. That role shifts naturally as fatigue passes from one body to another. When your own alertness sharpens unexpectedly, you accept it, knowing someone else will rest more deeply for a while. This shared vigilance is quiet cooperation at its most refined. No commands, no schedules. Just awareness flowing through the group like warmth redistributing where it is needed. You remember a time when exhaustion overwhelmed someone completely. They slept too deeply, breathing slow and shallow. It took a firm shake and shouted breath to bring them back. Since then, no one here allows themselves to disappear entirely into sleep on nights like this. Dreams come anyway, brief and vivid. Fragments of movement. Firelight turning into daylight. The sound of ice cracking becomes something else, something remembered rather than feared. You wake from these dreams without disorientation, knowing immediately where you are. Your body aches faintly, the dull reminder of cold held at bay rather than defeated. You shift to relieve pressure, careful not to wake the child pressed against you. Their warmth is steady now, breathing deep and even. Someone else must be guarding them more closely at this moment, allowing that deeper rest. Outside the shelter, the night stretches on indifferent to human rhythms. Inside, time is marked by small changes. A log added to the fire. Ash stirred. A hide adjusted near the entrance as wind brushes past. You listen again. No new sounds beyond the familiar. Wind, ice settling. The quiet hum of breath around you. Your muscles ease slightly, granting you another short rest. Sleep here is not escape, it is maintenance. A chance for the body to recover just enough to continue. You accept that limitation without frustration. Fighting it would only waste energy. Somewhere in the distance, a faint change in tone catches your ear. Wind direction shifts subtly, altering how sound carries. You file the information away even as your eyes remain closed. Awareness does not require full wakefulness. It lives deeper than that now. Your breathing slows. For a few moments you hover on the edge of deeper sleep. Warmth holds. The fire behaves. No one stirs urgently. You allow yourself to sink a little further this time. When you wake again, it feels like only seconds have passed, though it may have been much longer. Time loses precision in these conditions. You measure it by body sensation instead. Stiffness means too long still. Warmth fading means it is time to shift. You adjust careful and practiced. The child stirs briefly, then settles again. You feel a quiet satisfaction in that. Small actions ripple outward. As the night continues, the pattern repeats. Drift, listen, adjust, rest, wake. It is tiring, but it works. Each cycle brings you closer to dawn without exposing you to unnecessary risk. You realize that this way of sleeping shapes the mind over time. Awareness becomes constant but not anxious. You learn to hold alertness gently without tension. That skill stays with you even in safer seasons. For now, though, the night still holds power. You respect it by never turning your back on it completely. You rest with one eye half open, metaphorically, if not literally, trusting the group to do the same. The fire crackles softly, embers glow, breath rises and falls. The cold waits outside, patient but checked. You take another shallow breath, tuck your chin closer, and drift once more into that light watchful sleep that carries you through the longest hours until the sky begins to pale again. Morning still feels far away, but work does not stop just because the body is tired. Warmth here is not something you receive passively. It is something you maintain together minute by minute through small shared efforts that rarely draw attention to themselves. Survival on nights like this is collective labour even when no one is actively doing anything dramatic. Someone stirs and quietly takes over, tending the fire. Another adjusts the shelter entrance, narrowing it slightly as the wind shifts again. These actions are smooth, almost invisible, as if the group itself is moving rather than individuals. You barely register who does what. You only feel the result. Less draft, steadier heat, Earlier in the evening, fuel was gathered with care, pieces sorted by size, dry separated from damp. That work pays off now. No one has to scramble. Everything needed is within reach. Preparation hours ago saves energy now when energy is harder to spare. You feel your own contribution in small ways. A hide you stitched earlier keeps warmth where it is needed. A stone you positioned near the fire still radiates heat. A place you cleared on the ground allows someone to rest more comfortably. None of these actions matter alone. Together they create stability. The group functions like a system, flexible but coordinated. When one person slows, another compensates. When someone shivers too much, warmth is redirected without discussion. This is not kindness as an abstract value. It is responsiveness shaped by necessity. You notice how tasks shift subtly through the night. Those who rested more earlier now take on light work. Those who worked earlier settle into stillness. No one tracks time precisely, but the balance remains surprisingly even. Fatigue spreads out rather than piling onto one body. There is an old awareness here that no one survives nights like this alone. Even the strongest body weakens eventually. Even the most skilled hands grow clumsy. Shared effort keeps weaknesses from becoming fatal. Somewhere near the edge of the shelter, someone quietly repairs a seam by firelight, fingers moving slowly but steadily. Nearby, another person rearranges bedding, improving insulation, without waking those resting. The sound of scraping and soft fabric shifts blend into the night. You feel pride flicker briefly, then settle. Not pride in yourself alone, but in the system you're part of. It works because everyone participates when they can and rests when they must. No one hoards warmth. No one withdraws completely. The cold tests this cooperation constantly. A stronger gust of wind sneaks through a seam, and immediately someone shifts position to block it. No one sighs. No one complains. Response is automatic. You think about how fragile this balance is. Remove one element and strain increases everywhere else. Lose fire and bodies must compensate dangerously. Lose shelter and fuel burns too fast. Lose cooperation and everything unravels. Yet here you are, hours into the night, still warm enough to breathe steadily. That is not an accident. It is the result of countless small decisions layered on top of one another. You tuck your hands closer again, feeling warmth linger. Someone nearby exhales deeply, a sound of relief or sleep. The fire responds to fresh fuel with a soft crackle. The shelter creaks, then settles. Outside, the night remains unforgiving. Inside, the group holds together, redistributing effort and warmth as needed. This is what carries you through when tools and bodies alone are not enough. You rest into that knowledge, letting it support you as much as the hides beneath you. The night is still long, but the system holds, and as long as it does, you will too. The cold never stops looking for ways in. Even now, with fire steady and bodies pressed close, it creeps along surfaces, testing edges, slipping through tiny gaps. That is why heat is not only something you generate, it is something you shape, guide, and trap with whatever materials you have. Earlier, flat stones were pulled closer to the fire and left there soaking up warmth slowly. You remember the care taken not to rush this. Stones heated too fast crack. Stones warmed gently become reservoirs. Now hours later they are still giving heat back, radiating softly through layers of hide and earth. You shift one closer to your feet, careful not to touch it directly. Even now it is warm enough to surprise you. That warmth spreads upward, easing stiffness in your ankles. You exhale, letting tension release. This simple trick extends the reach of the fire far beyond its flames. Ash plays its part too. Someone has banked it thickly around the fire's base, dull grey and unassuming. Ash does not look useful, but it insulates remarkably well. It slows heat loss, protects embers, and softens the sharp bite of cold air creeping along the ground. You have learned not to judge materials by appearance. There are other small adjustments you barely notice anymore. A hide draped lower to block air movement. bedding rearranged so that no one lies directly on frozen earth, gaps filled with grass or spare fur. Each change reduces heat loss just enough to matter. The shelter itself becomes part of the heating system. Its low ceiling traps rising warmth. Its curved walls reflect heat inward rather than letting it escape. Even the entrance angle matters. A straight opening invites wind. A bent one confuses it. Someone nearby experiments quietly, stacking stones in a loose ring near the fire. The stones are not touching flames, but close enough to warm. Later they will be moved into the shelter, tucked along walls or near resting bodies. Heat carried where flame cannot go. You notice how careful everyone is with these improvised solutions. Trial happens slowly, no sudden changes. If something works, it stays. If it does not, it is adjusted gently rather than abandoned completely. Learning here is cautious because mistakes cost warmth. There is a faint smell of hot stone now, dry and mineral. It mixes with smoke and fur, becoming another familiar scent. You associate it with deeper warmth, the kind that lingers even when you pull slightly away from the fire. You think about how much of this knowledge came from noticing rather than inventing. Someone once leaned against a sun-warmed rock and felt relief. Someone else noticed ash stayed warm long after flame faded. Over time, these small observations turned into habits. You test the warmth again, placing your palm near a stone, then pulling back. Satisfied, you settle. The ache in your joints eases gradually. This heat feels different from fire, less sharp, more constant. Outside the cold thickens, inside heat is layered, fire, stone, bodies, shelter. Each alone would fail, together they hold. You realize that survival here depends less on dramatic innovation and more on attention. Attention to what stays warm. Attention to what loses heat fastest. Attention to where small adjustments yield big differences. Someone adds a final touch, sprinkling a thin layer of dry earth along the shelter edge to block a draft. It works immediately. You feel the air still. You relax into that stillness, letting warmth sink deeper. The night is quieter now, both outside and in your mind. The cold has not gone away, but it has been redirected, slowed, managed. You close your eyes again, trusting these small, careful measures to carry you through the next stretch of darkness. Heat hums softly around you, shaped by hands and patience rather than force. Smell becomes more noticeable as the night drags on. When vision fades and sound settles into a steady background, scent fills the space between thoughts. You breathe it in without meaning to layers of it, each one tied to comfort or caution. Smoke sits at the center, dry and familiar, clinging to hair and fur. It coats everything lightly, a scent that means warmth has been present for a long time. Beneath that is the heavier smell of animal fat. It lingers on hands, on lips, on the hides wrapped around you. It is not unpleasant. It smells like fuel, like energy waiting to be released. Your body recognizes it, instantly responding with a faint easing of tension, as if reminded that nourishment has not run out yet. There is also the smell of damp earth inside the shelter. It rises slowly as warmth thaws the top layer of frozen ground. That scent tells you the shelter is holding heat rather than losing it too quickly. When earth smells dry and dusty in winter, something is wrong. Tonight it smells alive. You catch the sharp edge of old ash, slightly bitter, mixed with smoke. Ash means fire has been here before and will likely remain. It absorbs scent, carries memory. Camps that smell strongly of ash feel safer than ones that smell too clean, too new. Fur has its own presence. Each hide smells different depending on the animal and how it was treated. Some carry a faint sweetness. Others smell wild and sharp. You know these differences well enough to identify them without looking. That familiarity comforts you. It means nothing unexpected has entered the shelter. Human scent weaves through everything. Warm skin, breath, hair. Sweat dried and rehydrated by heat. It blends into a single background note that you associate with belonging. When that smell is missing or altered, alarm bells ring quietly in your mind. Outside, scents drift in occasionally when the wind shifts. Cold air carries them clearly. Snow has a clean, almost metallic smell. Distant animals leave faint trails that catch your attention immediately. You recognize when those scents are fresh and when they are old. Tonight nothing new lingers too close. You remember how earlier someone scattered ash farther from the shelter, dulling stronger smells that might attract attention. That habit works best when done before night fully settles. Now the air feels balanced, neither too rich nor too exposed. Smell also signals time. The fire smells different as fuel changes. Fresh wood brings sharpness. Long-burned embers smell soft and dry. You know without looking that the fire is in its steady phase, now no longer hungry, but not fading either. You notice how scent changes when someone shifts position. A hint of damp fur appears briefly, then fades as it dries closer to warmth. This awareness keeps you alert without effort. You do not analyze it. You simply register it. Scents linger in memory more strongly than images. You realize that years from now, if you survive many winters, these smells will still return to you. Smoke on cold air, fat and ash, warm bodies in a frozen world. They will bring back nights like this instantly. You inhale slowly, letting familiar smells settle your thoughts. They anchor you here in this moment, reminding you that everything necessary is present. Fire, food, shelter, people. The cold still presses in from outside sharp and patient, but inside the shelter the air smells lived and claimed. That matters more than it seems. It means the space belongs to you, at least for this night. You shift slightly, breathing out, and let the blend of smoke and warmth carry you into another stretch of light rest. The night continues, but it feels less empty now, filled with scent and memory and quiet reassurance. By now, the cold no longer feels like an enemy you can defeat. It feels more like a teacher that never stops correcting you. Every small discomfort carries information. Every ache is a reminder to adjust, to change how you sit, how you breathe, how you move. You stop wishing the cold away. You start listening to it. You have learned that rushing makes things worse. Quick movements bring sweat. Sweat freezes. Stillness invites numbness. So you exist in a narrow middle space, shifting just often enough to keep blood moving, pausing just long enough to conserve energy. This rhythm is not taught with words. It settles into you through repetition. The cold teaches patience first. You learn to wait before reacting, to feel the difference between discomfort and danger. Not every chill needs immediate correction. Some pass on their own as your body adjusts. Others deepen quietly and demand attention before they grow teeth. Knowing which is which matters more than strength. You notice how the cold shapes posture. Shoulders round forward, chins tuck in, hands disappear instinctively into layers. Even faces change muscles, relaxing into expressions that minimize exposed skin. Over time, these positions feel natural. Standing upright and open would feel strange here, almost reckless. Movement becomes economical. No gestures are wasted. Tools are placed within reach before you need them. You plan motions in advance, reducing time spent exposed. This careful choreography turns survival into something almost graceful, though no one would call it that. The cold also teaches timing. When to feed the fire, when to eat, when to sleep lightly and when to stay awake. Poor timing drains resources faster than bad luck ever could. You feel this truth settle in your bones, learned through nights that dragged on too long and mornings that arrived too late. You think about how habits form here. A small adjustment made once becomes routine the next night. Routine becomes tradition. Tradition becomes expectation. Over generations, these accumulated habits turn into culture shaped not by preference but by necessity. There is humility in this learning. The cold does not respond to confidence or willpower. It responds only to respect. You stop testing limits unnecessarily. You stop proving things to yourself. Survival favors those who accept constraint rather than challenge it. You watch someone new to the group make a small mistake sitting too close to the fire, then too far away. They learn quickly, guided not by correction, but by observation. No one mocks them. Everyone remembers learning the same lesson. The cold also sharpens awareness of the body's signals. Hunger feels different now, less like discomfort and more like weakness. Fatigue carries weight, not just sleepiness. Pain becomes informative rather than frightening. You listen to these messages, closely adjusting before they escalate. You realize that comfort as you once understood it no longer applies. Comfort here is relative. It is the absence of sharp pain, the presence of steady warmth, the knowledge that nothing urgent is going wrong. That becomes enough. There is a strange calm in this acceptance. Fighting the cold mentally would exhaust you faster than the cold itself. Working with it, adapting to its demands, frees up energy for what matters. You settle into that calm now, wrapped in layers and shared warmth. The night feels long but not endless. You know how to meet it. The cold has taught you that. You breathe slowly, letting the lesson sink in. Survival here is not heroic. It is attentive. It is patient. It is built from countless small choices made correctly over and over again. The fire glows softly. Breath rises and falls. Outside, the cold waits ready to correct any lapse. Inside, you hold steady, guided by everything the night has already taught you. At some point in the night, your thoughts drift toward others who once shared this cold but were not quite like you. You picture them moving through the same frozen landscapes, feeling the same sting in their lungs, listening to the same wind slide across ice. They are familiar and unfamiliar at the same time, close cousins shaped by similar nights and slightly different answers. You imagine their bodies first. Shorter, broader, built low and solid against the cold. Thick bones, powerful chests. When you sit hunched like this, conserving heat, you realize how naturally that shape fits the environment. Less surface exposed, more warmth held close. It makes sense without needing explanation. You think about how they might have slept through nights like this, pressed together, sheltered by stone, firelight reflecting off heavy brows and deep-set eyes. The cold would not have spared them either. It never does. But their bodies may have held onto warmth a little longer, buying them time. Stone tools come to mind next. Heavy, durable, perfectly suited for rough hands and cold, stiff fingers. You have used tools shaped in similar ways, feeling how reassuring their weight can be when fine control fades. Precision matters, but so does reliability when numbness creeps in. You wonder how their shelters compared to yours. Did they favour deeper caves, trusting stone over hidden wood? Or did they build structures much like this one, adapting materials to local conditions? The evidence left behind offers hints but not certainty. You feel that uncertainty as you sit here imagining choices made tens of thousands of nights ago. There are traces that suggest care among them too. Injuries survived. Bodies healed. People carried long past the point where strength alone would have sustained them. That thought settles warmly in your chest. It means cold nights like this were faced together, not endured alone. You consider how knowledge passed between groups, sometimes blending, sometimes remaining separate. Techniques for sewing, fire-tending habits, shelter placement. A shared environment encourages shared solutions even when cultures remain distinct. Somewhere along the line, paths crossed. Ideas mixed. People mixed. Nights like this one were probably spent shoulder to shoulder by individuals who did not think of themselves as different in the ways you do now. Cold does not care about labels. It demands competence and cooperation. You glance at the fire and imagine how many times it burned for them as well. How many embers were guarded through long dark hours. How many mistakes were made and corrected. The night would have taught them the same lessons it teaches you now. There is a quiet respect in this thought. Survival here is not a competition. It is a shared challenge answered in multiple ways. Some worked longer, some faded. All were shaped by nights like this one. You feel a strange sense of continuity, as if the warmth you share now is connected to theirs across time. The same principles apply. Stay dry, stay fed, stay together, keep the fire alive, listen to the cold without letting it rule you. As your thoughts drift back to the present, you feel the shelter around you again. The breathing, the warmth, the steady glow of embers. Whatever differences existed between you and those who came before this night feels familiar enough to bridge them. You settle back, letting the image fade gently. The Ice Age night continues its slow passage, indifferent to species and names. Only survival matters, and you're doing what countless others once did before you, holding on, until the world lightens again. The most dangerous moments of the night are rarely dramatic. They come quietly disguised as small decisions that feel harmless in the moment. You have learned this the hard way. The Ice Age does not usually kill with sudden force. It waits for you to misjudge something simple. You think about mistakes as you sit there, warmth held just barely in balance. Standing too close to the fire and sweating through layers. Falling asleep with damp clothing. Letting exhaustion convince you that one more adjustment is not worth the effort. Each of these has ended nights badly before. You remember someone who once ignored the ache in their feet, telling themselves it would pass. By the time numbness turned to pain, it was already late. Toes healed slowly after that, never quite the same. The lesson stayed with everyone who witnessed it. Pain is not always the enemy. Silence can be worse. Another error comes from overconfidence. Believing a shelter is strong enough when it is not. Trusting the wind to stay calm. Assuming the fire will last until morning without attention. The cold punishes assumptions more harshly than fear. You notice how careful people are now, especially when tired. Tools are returned to the same place every time. Fire is checked even when it looks stable. Hides are shaken out before settling in. These habits exist because forgetting once was enough. There is also the temptation to save energy by doing nothing. It feels reasonable after hours of tension, but complete stillness lets cold creep deeper. Blood slows, muscles stiffen. You fight that instinct, gently shifting position, flexing fingers, keeping life moving just enough. You recall a night when someone wandered too far from the fire to relieve themselves and lost direction briefly in the dark. Panic did more damage than the cold itself. Since then, no one moves alone at night. Even small distances are shared. Some mistakes come from kindness without caution. Placing a hot stone directly against cold skin. Wrapping someone too tightly, cutting off circulation. Giving too much food at once to someone already weakened. Good intentions need experience to guide them. You watch for signs of these errors, now not judging, just aware. Awareness is the best protection left once the night is fully settled. You correct gently when needed with a touch or a glance. The cold teaches that survival is not about heroic effort. It is about avoiding small failures that stack up over time. You do not need to win the night. You only need to not lose it. As fatigue presses in again, you resist shortcuts. You take the extra moment to adjust your layers. You check your feet one more time. You glance at the fire, counting breaths between crackles. These tiny acts feel tedious, but they keep the night from tipping. You feel the weight of these lessons in your body, heavier than fear, but lighter than panic. They steady you. They remind you that most nights are survived not by bravery, but by care. The shelter creaks softly. The fire holds. Breath rises and falls around you. Somewhere outside the cold waits patiently for a mistake that does not come. You stay where you are, attentive but calm, letting experience guide your hands and thoughts. The night stretches on, but you've learned how not to give it what it wants. At some point, the night begins to change its tone. Not enough to be called morning, but enough that you feel it before you see anything different. The cold eases just slightly, loosening its grip in a way that is more sensed than measured. You shift and realize that the air no longer bites quite as hard when you inhale. It is subtle, but after hours of paying attention, subtle changes stand out. You listen for familiar sounds and notice what is missing. The deep cracking of ice slows. The wind softens, no longer scraping insistently at the shelter walls. Even the fire seems to respond flame steadier now, less restless. The night is still very much present, but it is no longer tightening. Hope does not arrive as excitement. It arrives as patience rewarded. You have learned not to anticipate dawn too early. Many nights offer false signals, brief lulls that give way to deeper cold. But this feels different. Your body recognizes the pattern. Muscles ease just a fraction. Breathing deepens without effort. Someone stirs nearby, lifting their head slightly, eyes scanning the shelter opening. No words pass between you, but understanding does. This is the long stretch before first light, the most fragile and the most promising part of the night. Endurance matters now more than vigilance. You become aware of how tired you truly are. Not the sharp fatigue that demands immediate rest, but the heavy weariness that settles into bones and joints. You carry it carefully, knowing collapse must wait until safety improves. For now, you remain upright, supported by habit and shared presence. Outside, the sky begins to shift almost imperceptibly. Stars dull slightly, their sharpness softened by the faintest suggestion of light. Clouds, if present, take on a different depth. You do not stare upward for long. Cold still lingers and warmth remains precious. You think about what dawn will bring. Movement, decisions, possibly travel. Possibly reinforcement of shelter. The work never truly stops, but daylight changes its nature. Tasks become easier, mistakes less costly. Visibility alone feels like a gift. Someone adds a final piece of fuel to the fire, not to build it higher, but to carry it through this last stretch. The timing is deliberate. Fuel wasted earlier would leave you exposed now. Fuel saved until too late would have let warmth fade prematurely. Experience guides the hand. You shift again, easing pressure from stiff joints. Sensation returns more quickly now. Fingers respond without delay. Toes ache less sharply. These small improvements feel enormous after hours of managing discomfort. The child beside you stirs, breathing changing as sleep lightens. You adjust the hide around them instinctively, then relax when they settle again. Soon they will wake fully greeted by a world that no longer feels actively hostile. The shelter feels different too, less oppressive. The air moves slightly refreshing without chilling. You sense the balance tipping back in your favor just enough to allow anticipation without recklessness. You let your eyes close briefly, trusting the group and the moment. This is the pause between effort and reward, the quiet space before the night releases you completely. You breathe slowly, letting relief spread without letting your guard drop entirely. Outside, the Ice Age landscape waits for daylight, unchanged but newly visible. Inside, warmth holds. People remain intact. The night has been endured. You sit there steady and calm, knowing that while this night will end, another will come. Still surviving this one matters. Each dawn reached is another lesson completed, another small victory earned through attention, cooperation and restraint. For now you wait. Dawn is close enough to imagine, but not yet close enough to greet. And in that gentle, hopeful stretch, the cold finally loosens its hold just enough to let you breathe a little easier. The light does not arrive all at once. It seeps in slowly, thinning the darkness rather than replacing it. At first it is only a suggestion, a faint greyness where black once pressed in. You notice it at the edges of your vision, then everywhere at once. The world feels wider with each passing moment. You lift your head slightly, careful not to disturb anyone resting against you. Shapes emerge where there were only shadows before. The curve of the shelter wall, the outline of a stone near the fire, the familiar forms of people still half wrapped in hides, faces softened by sleep and relief. Breath looks different now. The clouds are thinner, less dramatic, the air feels marginally kinder as it enters your lungs. Cold still lingers, but it has lost its sharpest edge. You know from experience that this is when mistakes can happen, when relief tempts carelessness. You stay steady, letting full comfort wait. The fire glows low, mostly embers now, but it has done its job. Someone stirs and adds just enough fuel to bring it back without wasting anything. Smoke rises straight up, less disturbed by wind than it was hours ago. That alone tells you much about how the morning will behave. Bodies round you begin to wake one by one. Stretching is slow and careful. Limbs protest, then loosen. Someone rubs their hands together, smiling faintly at the return of sensation. Another laughs quietly at stiff joints the sound light, and brief but unmistakable. Laughter feels different in daylight, safer. The child beside you opens their eyes, blinking against the dim grey light. You meet their gaze and nod once a silent reassurance. They relax immediately, trusting that the hardest part is over. In many ways it is. You take stock without rushing. No one is missing. No one lies too still. No urgent injuries demand attention. This assessment happens every morning, instinctive and thorough. Only once it is complete do shoulders begin to relax fully. Outside, the land reveals itself again. Snow catches the weak light dull rather than blinding. Ice gleams softly. Tracks appear where darkness hid them. You recognize patterns from the night before, confirming that nothing came too close while you rested. You feel hunger return in a different way now, less urgent, more hopeful. Morning hunger means opportunity. Food gathered or hunted today will prepare you for the next night. The cycle continues unbroken. Someone begins to dismantle part of the shelter, loosening hides and supports to let light and air in. Others prepare to move folding layers carefully, returning tools to their places. Every action has purpose now, directed by visibility rather than guesswork. You rise slowly, testing your legs. They hold, stiff but strong enough. Warmth spreads as you move, replacing ache with readiness. You take a deep breath and let it out fully for the first time since nightfall. There is satisfaction here, quiet but profound. Not triumph, not celebration. Simply the knowledge that you endured, that attention and cooperation carried you through another test. You glance back once at the shelter, the fire, the place that held you through the coldest hours. Soon it may be left behind or reshaped for another night. Either way, its purpose has been fulfilled. The light strengthens. Day claims the landscape inch by inch. You step forward into it, carrying the night's lessons with you, ready to use them again when darkness returns. The day is awake now, even if the sun itself still hides behind cloud or ridge. Light spreads enough to soften every edge, revealing the world as solid again rather than imagined. You stand a little straighter, testing your balance, feeling strength return as warmth slowly follows movement. Night demanded endurance. Day allows recovery. Around you, the group reorganizes with quiet efficiency. Hides are shaken out and folded. Stones warmed overnight are set aside to cool. Ashes scattered, erasing the most obvious signs of your presence. Nothing here is wasted. Even what looks spent still has a role before being left behind. You notice how differently the land feels now. What was threatening an hour ago looks manageable in daylight. Slopes reveal their shape. Wind shows its direction openly. Tracks in snow tell clear stories instead of half-imagined ones. Knowledge that was uncertain in the dark becomes confirmed by sight. The fire is reduced carefully, embers spread thin so they die safely rather than flaring. Fire carried you through the night. Now it must be released. Smoke thins and drifts away, taking the last traces of darkness with it. You feel hunger again, but it is lighter edged with anticipation instead of urgency. Food gathered today will be planned with the next night in mind. Every daylight action reaches forward into darkness. That connection never breaks. Someone points briefly toward a distant feature. A line of trees, a break in the rock, a place that might offer shelter later. Heads turn. The image is stored away. Memory begins forming for the next test even as this one ends. You take a moment to check yourself fully. Fingers respond, toes ache but move. Skin stings where cold pressed hardest, but nothing feels lost. You breathe deeply, filling your lungs without pain for the first time in hours. Relief settles slowly rather than rushing in. There is no celebration. Survival is expected, not applauded. Instead, there is quiet readiness. Another night will come. Another cold test will arrive. What mattered was that you met this one prepared. You step away from the shelter at last, boots crunching softly on snow. The sound feels almost loud after so many hours of restraint. The day welcomes noise again. As you move forward, the night already begins to soften in memory. What remains are lessons: how to trap warmth, how to share it, how to listen, how to wait. These lessons stay with you, carried in muscle and habit rather than thought. The Ice Age world stretches ahead, vast and indifferent, but no longer overwhelming. You know how to live in it now, one careful night at a time. You walk on, letting the light strengthen around you. The pace slows here. Breath deepens. The cold fades to background. You feel tired but safe. The images of firelight, shared warmth and quiet endurance begin to blur gently at the edges like frost melting from a window as morning grows brighter. You remind yourself that people survived this, night after night, winter after winter, not through force but through patience and care. The thought settles like a blanket. Your body relaxes. The world feels steady. You are warm enough. You are fed enough. You are not alone. And as the Ice Age night slips fully behind you, your thoughts grow softer, quieter, slower, drifting toward rest rather than readiness. There is nothing left to prove, nothing left to guard, only the calm knowledge that you made it through. So let the images fade now. Let the fire dim, let the cold stay outside, and let sleep come easily, knowing that even in the harshest nights humans found a way to endure.